This is day 6 of the Undercover Policing Inquiry. We've just heard from Michael Chant, who is General Secretary of the Revolutionary Communist Party of Britain, Marxist-Leninist. I'm joined with Dave Morris, who's been listening to all the evidence today with me. What do you make of today then, Dave?
Well, today was a short day. Why the police are infiltrating groups like the Revolutionary Communist Party, Marxist-Leninist, only they know. But I think looking back over the week and last week as well, I think we've made remarkable steps forward in, if you like, winning the battle over this secret unit or the secret undercover policing. Last week we had basically the police apologising for a culture of sexism and misogyny in the police force, and in particular in that unit, or these undercover units, saying that should never have happened. They apologised for targeting anti-racist organisations and justice campaigns and police accountability groups. That should never have happened. They apologised for the woeful management of these units, which of course were authorised and approved at the highest level. Yesterday, I gave evidence myself on Monday about groups I was involved with in the 1970s and 80s. And maybe you can ask me about that, maybe come back to that. But I think yesterday was also highly significant, where we had an undercover officer who became head of the SDS, head of special branch at a later point.
Roger Pierce, yeah.
Roger Pierce, and then he became head of Metropolitan Police Intelligence. And he basically, I think the most significant part, well, there's two major significant parts of his evidence. First of all, he was torn apart by the counsel to the inquiry over the sexist and misogynist culture and the sexual relationships, and his own reporting about women and women activists. But something that was probably missed by a lot of people was, he was asked really, why weren't these things discussed at the meetings of the undercover officers and the managers? There seems to be this whole claim that nobody knew about these sexual relationships. But then when he was asked about it, he said, oh, well, they were so out of order that anything could possibly happen like that all officers would have known that, and therefore it was never discussed, because it was so out of order. They couldn't believe anything like that would possibly happen, even though it was widespread. But then he said a whole range of things were out of order, and basically implying they were never discussed. Legal professional privilege, breaching legal professional privilege. I can't remember the other things now. Taking positions of responsibility in organisations and influencing the course of events, being an agent provocateur. So he listed a whole range of things and said, basically we didn't discuss those because they were so out of order and everyone would have known that. And yet, all the officers were engaged in those, reporting on MPs.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly as well, I mean, just on that, he also said that he started talking about what the attitudes of officers would have been on these topics. And it's put to him by David Barr as like, how would you have known what their opinions were if you didn't discuss it?
So
which is a great...
he said that they didn't discuss it, but yes, I mean, it's obvious they were discussed behind the scenes.
Well,
but,
I mean,
but
we've
never.
heard the evidence from Graham Coates during Tranche
Yeah.
1, who talked about the culture within the back room of the SDS, that talked about, he described it
Sexist
as being
jokes.
that it was as, that the sexist and racist attitudes of SDS officers
Yes.
would have been shocking even to the police culture of the time, which would have been worse than the mainstream culture
So
of the
he's
time.
the only one, or there's only one or two officers
So
that have
far.
kind of hinted. But hopefully, as more officers come forward, and as the Metropolitan Police has basically condemned, these kind of practices, I think they're going to move to condemn the whole operation, the whole secret political policing units. I think it's almost like a series of dominoes, and they're all beginning to fall, which is absolutely right. I mean, it cannot be justified what was going on. They knew it was bad. That's why they kept things totally secret for so long.
Yeah. Just going on to what was said today, we had 3 undercover officers, summary of evidence brought in. 2 officers, they're not being called to give evidence because they're dead, and 1 because he's got Parkinson's disease. In all 3 cases, they still get anonymity, which is challenging. But
No
we
reason.
heard, no reason whatsoever. We heard about HN67. Michael Hartley, he stole the identity of Frank Bennett's brothers, who died in a tragic fishing accident. We're going to be hearing from Frank tomorrow.
Okay.
We also heard about HN, was it 67 or 80?
67.
67, Alan Bond.
Oh, yes.
Who
Allegedly fathered a child, and
yeah.
it's a bit disputed, but
yeah, I mean, he admits to having sexual relationships whilst deployed undercover.
yes.
And we also heard from HN83, I'm thinking to say it was, 82, who was deployed into the Socialist Workers' Party and then left as part of the split that created Red Action and infiltrated the Anti-Fascist Action, which was a militant physical force anti-fascist group. Interestingly, when he was withdrawn, he wasn't replaced by another undercover officer because it was felt the group was too dangerous to infiltrate, which really puts alight the fact that these undercover officers were deployed against dangerous groups. When there is supposedly a dangerous group, they're too scared to put an undercover officer in.
Yes.
All those 3 summaries of evidence were quite brief. There's a whole bunch of information about them which have now been published on or should be now on the Undercover Policing Inquiry website. Often there's a bit of a delay in that, but it should be there now to check out. Like I say, all 3, none of those 3, 2 of them because they're dead, will be called to give evidence.
Yes.
As well as Frank Bennett tomorrow, we've also got
Yes.
HN19 Malcolm Shearing, who was the officer who spied on the Revolutionary Communist Party of Britain, Marxist-Leninist, who we heard from Michael Chant today.
Yep.
Like the way in which the inquiry tends to work is we hear from the civilian witness who was spied upon. The day before, we hear from the undercover officer
Yes.
who did the spying. So there's a couple of things that were put to Michael Chant today from HN19's evidence that I think
Yes.
we're going to get a recall for tomorrow. So I think that'll be
Okay.
interesting.
Yes.
I think particularly there was a lot of talk about the way in which the RCPB M-L had like a history of street violence, which
He claimed, yeah.
yeah, he claimed, yeah. I mean, this generally refers to anti-fascism.
Yes.
But
It's funny how they focus on 1 or 2 things, or no, they make sweeping statements on. I mean, Roger Pierce did that yesterday. I think he talked about. I can't remember who it was he was going on about, but one example. He talked about. I think it was the London Workers Group that. They were linked to violence or something, or potential violence. I was involved with the London Workers Group for 7 or 8 years, but the only example they could give was, it was Freedom. It was Freedom Collective. They couldn't find anything about the Freedom Collective to justify their infiltration for years of a group that produced a newspaper, ran a bookshop, and had a printing press. And they said, yes, but they once went to a protest in Scotland where people cut the fence and wanted to occupy a construction site for a nuclear power station.
yeah,
And it was an openly publicised event with police, inside the construction site anyway. and it, resulted in a few arrests. But that was the only thing. But then that one incident somehow justified, they had a potential for violence or something, or arson, because they claimed that they were going to, burn a pile of wood or something. It wasn't clear.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
certainly.
I mean, I think that what they're doing is they're clutching at straws.
Sure.
To try to, at this stage, I believe, it's got to a point where it's really already been decided that almost everything they did was out of order. These Spycops deployments. They can't justify infiltrating the vast majority of groups. They can't justify the tactics that they used, and so they're really clutching at straws now, trying to home in on anything that gives them a slight, what they might call a justification.
Yeah. Certainly, though there was this in HN19's reports, though there was this preface that there was a history of street violence by the RCPB M-L. It's a bit of a mouthful. The majority of his reports seem to relate to cultural events, concerts, parties, sporting events, other cultural things. So yeah, I think you're completely right. We're going to see more of that. Okay, so we're back again. I mean, that's it. I think pretty much for today.
Okay, thank you.
We're back again in tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. We start off with Frank Bennett, who was the brother of whose brother was identity was stolen by undercover police officers. Michael Hartley. Michael Hartley. I do apologise. So many names come through. Then after that, we'll be hearing from HN19, who used the cover name Malcolm Shearing when he infiltrated the Revolutionary Communist Party of Britain, Marxist-Leninist. That should be another full day, and that'll be it for the week. So thanks for joining us. I'll do a Twitter Spaces later on today. Please join if you like. It won't be as long as last night's hour and a half one, but it should be interesting. Thanks for joining.